Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the career of Elvis Presley.
Oh, yeah.
You've brought a fascinating collection of excerpts with you today.
Yeah, he did.
And I think they really highlight how Elvis was able to reinvent himself throughout his career.
Right.
From those early Rockabilly days to those iconic Vegas performances. So it's going to be quite a journey.
It is. Elvis is such a fascinating figure in music history.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he wasn't just a singer. He was a master of reinvention who just reshaped the music world.
Yeah.
Time and time again.
He really did.
And we'll explore all that, how he navigated the changing, musical tastes and trends.
Well, let's start at the very beginning.
Sure.
We can't talk about Elvis without talking about his time at Sun Records.
Oh, of course not.
Those early recordings, it's all right. Blue Moon of Kentucky, they're
Right.
just electric.
Absolutely.
What do you think it was about that blend of country and R&B that resonated so much?
It was revolutionary. I mean, think about it. Country and R&B back in those were considered completely separate worlds.
Right.
And Elvis was a white artist in the South
Yeah.
who grew up surrounded by both.
Uh-huh.
His music became a bridge between those two worlds.
Yeah.
And it really shook things up. He was a cultural chameleon who broke down walls with his sound.
It's interesting because his voice is so distinctive, too.
Absolutely.
You know, those hiccups, the way he slides between notes, it's...
Yeah. And that's really what set him apart.
Uh-huh.
He took inspiration from his gospel roots, from the blues, from country crooners.
Right.
And he blended it all together to create this vocal style that was both familiar and completely new.
Yeah.
So it's no wonder he inspired so many imitators.
And it's not just the sound, it's the attitude, too.
Right.
He was so energetic, so charismatic on stage. It almost feels dangerous compared to what people were used to.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Did that play a role in his appeal, do you think?
absolutely. Elvis challenged the norms of what a performer could be.
Yeah.
His movements, those hip shakes. I mean, they
Right.
were considered outrageous at the time.
Oh, yeah.
But they just added to his mystique and captivated audiences. And that was key to his success.
So we have this young Elvis who's breaking barriers, shaking things up musically and culturally.
Right.
And then he gets drafted.
Right.
Did his time in the Army affect his music?
Definitely. When Elvis came back, his sound had evolved.
Yeah.
His music with RCA had this more polished feel to it.
It did.
It appealed to a wider audience.
Uh-huh.
Think about the soaring vocals on It's Now or Never.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
He really had an incredible vocal range.
He did.
And speaking of range, we can't forget about Elvis's gospel roots.
Right.
That seemed to be a constant throughout his career.
Absolutely. Gospel music was the foundation of everything for Elvis.
It was.
It wasn't just a genre for him. It was deeply personal.
Right.
Some of his most powerful performances are those gospel recordings.
Yeah.
It's where you hear the raw emotion, the spiritual connection. Think about the power of Peace in the Valley.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
It's almost like you can hear his soul in those songs.
absolutely.
And it's fascinating that he actually won 3 Grammys for gospel performances.
Yeah.
Not for rock and roll.
Not rock and roll.
It's really something.
Exactly. Albums like His Hand in Mine.
Yeah.
Those are testaments to his deep connection to gospel music.
Uh-huh.
They really showcase that raw emotion, that spiritual side
Yeah.
that was always present in his music.
It really was.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Uh-huh.
It's amazing how those gospel roots really shine through, even when he's performing other genres.
Yeah.
It's almost like you can hear that influence in everything he did.
You're absolutely right. That foundation in gospel infused everything.
Yeah.
From his ballads to his rock anthems.
Uh-huh.
And speaking of anthems,
Yeah.
we have to talk about the 68 comeback special.
Yes.
That felt like a real turning point in his career.
It did. It's like he was reclaiming his throne after years of Hollywood movies and softer sounds. Right.
What made that special so impactful?
Well, think about the context.
Okay.
Elvis had been away from live performing for a while,
Yeah.
and there were doubts about whether he could still command the stage.
Right.
But in that special, he proved everyone wrong.
He did.
He came out in that black leather suit,
Oh, yeah.
playing those stripped-down versions of his early hits, and it was electric.
It was.
He reminded everyone of that raw power and energy that made him a star.
It's almost like he was rediscovering himself as a performer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the special had this really interesting mix of styles.
Yeah.
You had the intimate sit-down sessions with his band,
Right.
where they were just jamming and playing blues and gospel.
Uh-huh.
And then you had those big production numbers where he's the ultimate showman.
Right.
It showed his incredible versatility.
And it paved the way for his next big reinvention. Vegas.
Yes, it did.
I have to admit, when I think of Elvis, those Vegas years with the jumpsuits and the big band are what come to mind.
What do you think drew him to that kind of spectacle?
Vegas was perfect for Elvis at that stage of his career.
Uh-huh.
It allowed him to create these extravagant shows with elaborate staging and costumes.
Yeah.
He could showcase his showmanship and connect with audiences on a grand scale.
Right.
It was larger than life, just like him.
But I know there are some people who see that era as his decline. What's your take on that?
I think that's an oversimplification.
Okay.
Elvis was always evolving as an artist.
Right.
His voice matured during those Vegas years,
Yeah.
and he brought incredible depth and emotion to those ballads.
It's true.
Think about Suspicious Minds.
Oh, yeah.
It's a masterpiece of storytelling.
It is.
It wasn't a decline. It was a new chapter.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
It's like he was constantly pushing himself to explore new avenues.
Yeah.
And speaking of pushing boundaries, those iconic performances like The Ed Sullivan Show and Aloha from Hawaii,
Right.
he wasn't afraid to make a statement.
No, he wasn't. Elvis was a master of the spectacle.
He was.
He understood how to create moments that would capture the world's attention.
Yeah.
The way he used television, for example, was revolutionary. He was one of the first artists to really understand the power of that medium.
Right.
To connect with fans globally.
It's true. Think about Aloha from Hawaii.
Right.
The first concert broadcast globally via satellite.
Exactly.
Over 1 billion people tuned in to watch him.
It's incredible.
He was a global phenomenon. And it wasn't just the big shows either. Every performance, every recording session, he seemed to bring this incredible energy and passion.
That's what makes Elvis so enduring. Beyond the hits, beyond the image.
Right.
There was a true artist
Yeah.
who was constantly searching for ways to connect with his audience.
Right.
He poured his heart and soul into his music.
Yeah.
And you could feel that.
And that passion really resonates even today. It's been decades since his passing.
Right.
But Elvis's music continues to be celebrated and discovered by new generations.
It does.
It's clear he left a mark that goes far beyond just record sales or chart positions.
Absolutely.
What do you think is the secret to his enduring legacy? It's incredible to think about how his music continues to reach people all these years later, you know? We've talked about the rebel, the showman, the gospel influence.
Right.
But I think what really stands out to me is his fearlessness.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't afraid to break the mold and take risks.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Elvis never settled for the status quo.
Right.
He was always pushing boundaries, both musically and in terms of his performance style.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge part of what makes him so compelling.
Let's talk about that innovative spirit for a second.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier how he experimented with recording techniques.
Right.
What are some specific examples that really showcase his creativity in the studio?
Well, one that always comes to mind is Heartbreak Hotel.
Oh, yeah.
The use of echo on his vocals in that song was groundbreaking at the time.
It was.
It created this haunting, lonely atmosphere. That perfectly captured the mood of the lyrics.
I get chills just thinking about it. It's such a simple effect.
Right.
But it adds so much depth and emotion.
Exactly. And he wasn't afraid to push the envelope further in Are You Lonesome Tonight?
Yeah.
He used multiple vocal overdubs,
Oh, okay.
which created this almost conversational feel.
Right.
It's like he's talking to himself, wrestling with these feelings of loneliness and regret.
It's amazing how these techniques, which are so common now, were considered radical back then.
Yeah.
He was really a pioneer in shaping the sound of rock and roll.
Absolutely. And his influence didn't stop in the studio.
Oh, no.
His live shows were equally innovative.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
We talked about those Vegas spectacles.
Right?
But even before that, he was transforming what a live performance could be.
Before Elvis, most concerts were pretty straightforward affairs.
Yeah.
But he brought a whole new level of energy and theatricality to the stage.
He did.
His movements, the lighting, the way he interacted with the audience, it was captivating.
He understood that a concert was more than just playing music.
Right.
It was a visual and emotional experience.
Exactly. He was a master showman who knew how to create a spectacle.
Uh-huh.
And in doing so, he really paved the way for the modern arena concert experience we know today.
It's mind-blowing to think about the ripple effects of his innovations.
It is.
He wasn't just an entertainer, he was a true visionary
Right.
who shaped an entire industry.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive,
Okay.
what's the one takeaway you want listeners to remember about Elvis Presley?
I think it's the importance of staying true to yourself, even when you're pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
Elvis never lost sight of his roots.
Uh-huh.
Even as he evolved and experimented,
Right.
he brought his whole self to his music.
Yeah.
And that authenticity is what continues to resonate with people all these years later.
Beautifully said. He was a true original,
He was.
and his impact on music and culture is undeniable. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the incredible career of Elvis Presley.
My pleasure.
We hope you'll continue to explore his music and legacy on your own.